Welcome back, America. We're here with former Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with his really fantastic book. It is both current events and historical. It really is. And it's very intriguing. And there's a lot in here about the United States and the relationship between the two countries and Benjamin Netanyahu and multiple figures you're familiar with. It's called BB My Story. And you can get it at bbmystory.com or, of course, Amazon.com. You spent a lot of years in the United States. As a matter of fact, you went to my high school, or I went to your high school, Cheltenham Township outside of Philadelphia.
Oh.
You made it to the Hall of Fame there. They will not allow me into the Hall of Fame. But in any event,
why not? You should.
You know, we've gone totally woke here. That's all I can say. But in any event, your father taught here. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, my father was a historian, and he believed before the World War II that if we don't establish a Jewish state, there'll be a Holocaust which would consume the millions of Jews in Europe, and he was right, of course. So he tried to persuade the leader of our movement to come to the United States. He went in 1939. He was 29 years old. He went to see this leader, whose name was Jabotinsky, in London, and he said, "You're working for the right cause in the wrong place." And Jabotinsky was twice his age, and he asked him, and he was a brilliant man, he asked him, "Why do you say that?" And he said, because you cannot persuade, if you want to persuade Britain to create a Jewish state or enable the creation of a Jewish state, and Britain controlled our country at that time, then you have to go to America. America is the rising power in the world. There'll be a world conflict, and America will emerge as the dominant power in the world. So they packed everyone, went to the United States, and soon afterwards, Jabotinsky died. So my father spent the war years in the United States agitating alone, virtually alone, for a Jewish state. And President Roosevelt didn't like that at all, because he didn't want to aggravate his British allies. So my father did something, and he couldn't get in. My father couldn't make any headway with the Democrats because of Roosevelt's position. So he did something quite astounding. He went to the Republicans. Nobody did that. And he argued that the platform, the Republican Party platform, should be adopted in 1944 to recognize a Jewish state. 3 months later, as my father had predicted, the Democratic convention did the same thing. So my father was actually the progenitor of the bipartisan American support for a Jewish state, for the state of Israel. And he proceeded to not only to talk to public opinion and the politicians, he wanted to talk also to the generals. So he got an audience when he was in his mid-30s with General Eisenhower, who was the head of the army at the end of the war. And he said to Eisenhower, "You really should support a Jewish state." And Eisenhower asked him, "Well, why? I mean, you're only 600,000. If there'll be a war, you'll be wiped out." And my father said, "No, we'll be the strongest power in the Middle East, and we'll help protect it against Soviet domination." And Eisenhower repeated the question. He said, "You're only 600,000. How will you do that?" And my father said to him, "General, you've just seen in two world wars, World War I and World War II, how we Jews fight when we fight for others. Can you imagine how we'll fight when we fight for ourselves?" And Eisenhower was so impressed with that, and with the fact that my father was talking about blocking Soviet domination of the Middle East, that he convened the whole general staff to hear my father again. And this was all achieved by my father's view of how do you harness other countries. You have to talk about their interests, how you have common interests and common values. And that very much influenced me. So I would say that much of my, the most dominant effect on my thinking came from my father, who basically told me that you have to be very strong to survive. The weak don't survive, and you don't make peace with the weak. The weak get devoured. You make peace with the strong. We have to make Israel strong. And he continued to have that influence throughout his life until he passed away at the age of 102. I was very fortunate. I couldn't have had a better teacher than him.
And you went to MIT. why did you go to MIT, and what did you learn at MIT?
Well, I initially didn't go to MIT. When I finished an American high school and went back to serve in the Israeli army, none of the Ivy League, I was in the top 1% of my class, but none of them would accept me because I said I'm going into the army for 3 years. So there's only one university that actually agreed to accept me 3 years ahead of time, unheard of, and that was Yale University. So I went into the army. Then I signed up for an additional year, and I wrote Yale a letter, and I apologized, and I said I need another year. They agreed. Then I wrote them another letter because I spent 5 years in the army, and they agreed too. But in the military, in my special unit, I was exposed to cutting-edge technology. And I realized that I wanted to go to a university that had the strongest technological edge possible. Therefore, I apologized to Yale, whom I really appreciate, and decided to go to MIT to really get to seize the future in terms of technology. And I must say that it really helped. It was, I think, a wise decision.
When we come back, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to ask you about Kaya. Who's Kaya? We'll find out in a moment. We'll be right back.